pass 1,000 seasons and never give up on its reasons. This new day calls our name. Light up the day with love. We'll find a way as one. Across the world our lives unfold. We're here together. Every moment now, a song we sing out loud. Every road we find we climb. We are one. We've come so far. We are breaking through. We're standing on the edge of a better view. Who will you be? Don't give up this fight. Tomorrow starts today. All we need is time. Time can pass 1,000 seasons and never give up on its reasons. This new day calls your name. Light up the day with love. We'll find a way as one. Across the world our lives unfold. We're here together. Every moment now, a song to sing out loud. Every road we find we climb. We are seasons and never give up on its reasons. This new day calls our name. Light up the day with love. We'll find a way as one. Across the world our lives unfold. We're here together. Every moment now, a song to sing
right. Okay. Hi. Hello, guys. I'm a little out of sorts this morning because I didn't really get a lot of sleep last night. There were a lot to do. So I'm glad you're tuning in. Hi, Janie. Missed you. Actually, yesterday I had dinner with some really old friends. Well, not really old, like maybe 15 years. She asked me, "Why is your voice hoarse?" I said, "Because I've been talking so much." Anyway, please put in the comments where you're tuning in from. I see there are a few of you online right now. We're going to be talking about, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Can you hear me? You can hear me now, right? Okay, if you can hear me, give me some likes or give me some hearts so I know that you can hear me. Good evening. And today we're going to be talking about, Northern Lights Black Spruce. It's one of my favorite farms. I mean, I love all the farms. I've been to, let's see, my first farm was St. Mary's. Was it? No, my first one was Mona. Because it was convention. And then it was St. Mary's, which we talked about. And then it was Ecuador, which we also talked about, because Ecuador was my platinum retreat. And then it was the French farm, the lavender French farm. It was my diamond retreat. And then I went to Croatia, which is the helichrysum farm. That was my royal retreat, I think. And then Hawaii, sandalwood, the Australian sandalwood farm, blue cypress, actually. It was the Australian blue cypress farm. And then 2017, I went to the Northern Lights farm for the first time. Where else have I been? I think that's it. Croatia, yeah. Australia, yes. Hawaii, yeah. So 8. I remember I've been to more. I can't remember it now. Anyway, so, but then I have been back to, I've done the winter harvest at St. Mary's 3 times, but I have been back in Northern Lights farm 5 or 6. I can't remember, maybe 6 also, maybe 6 times. So I was there 2017. That was the first winter harvest day they opened at Northern Lights. And then 2018, it was the Winter Festival, the first year of Winter Festival. And then 2019 was the second year of Winter Festival. But I also went back in the summer, which I'm going to show you photos. And then I went back twice. I went twice during one winter festival. Yeah, so I went with my team because I had a team that was spanning over like 3 weeks. So because they were limiting the people or something like that. So I went there and I flew away and then I went back. And then the same year in the summer, I went again. So I went there 3 times that year. Crazy, right? Yeah, I love Fort Nelson. It's a place that I'm planning to move to when the kids are older, when they're in college. Well, not exactly move, but I plan to, get a place there and live there part of the year, which I know it's crazy, but I fell in love with a little town and fell in love with the people, and I fell in love with the land. I fell in love with the energy. So you have to be there to experience it. A lot of people ask me why Northern Lights. And I feel like because it's so close to town, it's only about 10 to 15 minutes drive to the town. It's very convenient. There are 2. So I actually spent a week there by myself at the house in Fort Nelson. And I could drive to the town and I could do grocery there. There are 2 big supermarkets. There's a health food store. The people in the health food store know me. There's a little souvenir shop. It's called the Trapper's Den. And then 3 hours away, there's the best ever natural hot spring. And the people are so friendly. There's so much culture of the Aboriginal Indians, Native Indians. I don't know how you say it in English. We call them, in Chinese, we call them American Indians. So back in the days, I think, I don't know what you call them, Native Indians. There's so much culture. The people are so friendly. There are a few restaurants. There's a bar. And it's just a lovely, lovely, lovely little town. There's one Chinese restaurant and one Chinese family there from Hong Kong, I think. And yeah, it's amazing. You guys all have to go. And the Highland Flats is lovely too, but it's a little bit too far away from civilization for me. It's not as convenient. So I really, really love Northern Lights. And you can actually see a lot of the times. I've actually seen Northern Lights many times because I've been there so many times. You can actually see it sometimes at 7 when because the sun goes down early, like 5 or 4 sometimes. And you can really see it when you're driving into the city and driving into the town, and you can see the whole sky light up. Oh my God! One time we were driving into town. No, we were driving from town back to the house, which is right next to the farm. And suddenly this whole sky just lit up with Northern Lights. And it was green. It wasn't very, very, very a lot of it, but it was green and yellow and a little bit pinkish. And it's just there, you know? And the sky is so big. And then at that moment, you feel like you're so small. Every little thing that upsets you happened to you. And you're like, my goodness, I'm so small. Why are you making it such a big deal? You know, it's just a lovely place. I love it. Yes. Anyway, so let's start with the presentation. I've put on a lot of oils because, as I said, I'm not fully 100% me, but I've put on like Sacred Mountain, Roots and Wings. I love the new Roots and Wings, by the way. I put on Clarity. I've put on Present Time to make sure. I don't want to put on Highest Potential because when I put on Highest Potential, I've got all these even more ideas, and I won't be able to sleep. So, all right. So it's just all right. You can all see, right? Yes. Let's do this. So Northern Lights here. This is a photo that I took. This is our distillery. It's beautiful there. This is our distillery, and I always say that this side is the north, the other side is south. So right outside of the distillery, you can see the Northern Lights. And then at that end is the west. So it's the sunset, and the side where I'm standing taking the photo is the east. So that's where the sun rises. I'll show you a bit more photos. I love it there. So why did Gary have to go search for Black Spruce? Who loves Black Spruce? I love Black Spruce. It's great. I'm going to talk a little bit about the usage in a moment. Okay, so back in 2013, so I joined in 2010, 2011, somewhere here, right? And we didn't have a lot of growth, but since 1995, when Young Living Essential Oils was established, so Gary went back farther than 1995. So when Gary started, it was called Living Young, which you have seen on some of the product labels that I've shown you. It was Living Young, and he started in 1983, 1984, somewhere around there, between 83 to 85. So 10 years later, he met Gary, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how he met Mary in the Ningxia Red one. So, and then they got together, they partnered up, and Mary helped him with the finances and with him running the business. And then they started in 1995. And you can see that it's a very steady, healthy growth, about 10-20% a year, which is very, very healthy. So until 2012, suddenly there was a big surge in 2013, and then an even bigger surge in 2014. You can see that this nearly grew about nearly 100%, right? And from between 2013 to 2014, it grew over 100%. So it doubled the volume of oils and products that we were selling. And you know, everything that we make and everything that we sell are all handmade. The oils are all handmade. They're all it depends on the season. If you have a homestead, if you grow vegetables, if you grow fruits, you know that it depends on the weather. And because all our oils depend on the weather, when you have such a crazy growth, you will have things that are out of stock, and a lot of essential oils don't go out of in other companies that don't out of stock because it's all not all natural. They can add adulterated things in, they can add this and add that, and then make sure that they never go out of stock. With Young Living, Gary would rather have it go out of stock before he use any inferior oils or use anything that has been adulterated. So we went out of stock with Valor. And this was also around the time when we started using social media for Young Living. And this was also, so I joined in 2011. I made silver in 2011 and I made gold, and we opened in 2013 in Hong Kong. And then we actually, I don't know what happened, maybe the energy of the universe, and we just all grew. So yeah, in Hong Kong, we grew like 300%, 500% out from nothing to 5 times, 6 times the growth. Now I don't even know. So we've had some steady growth in Hong Kong. And so you can see this whole worldwide, especially in the US. So I think, I'm not sure, I think 5 years, the stats were still about 80% of Young Living's business came from United States, and Canada came from the North America. So, and most of the sales still in Young Living comes from US. Anyway, so we grew over 100%. And back then, all the sets, so these are product photos from before 2013. So this was the starter kit. When I joined, and I think when a lot of you joined, it was called Start Living. This was what I had, Start Living with Young Living. I had a green box. I couldn't find the photo of green box. And then they moved on to the white box. And this was the diffuser that I had when I first started. And it's called, Start Living with Everyday Oils. And it came with an everyday oil set. It did not come with Stress Away in the beginning, but the everyday oil set has Valor in it. And then it moved on to this white box. This was around 2013. And they also had Valor. And then they called it the Premium Starter Kit from Young Living. And they also had Valor. And so it was like this. And not only that, other sets also had Valor in it. Raindrop had Valor in it. Feelings Kit had Valor in it. Everyday Oils had Valor in it. And the reason why Gary put Valor in the sets that are important, because it represents courage and it represents change, right? And in order for somebody to change, you have to have courage. You need courage in order to change, because in order for you to do anything with your life, you need to change yourself, and you need to trust yourself, and you need to move, and you need to action. And that's why Valor was so important. That's why he put it in all the sets, because Young Living is a company that is about change, that is about improving yourself, that is about improving your health, improving your wellness, and giving you abundance from a poverty mindset to a abundance mindset, right? And also, other than the change, it can also help with your sleep. It can help with your snoring. It can help with your breathing. Somebody calls it a chiropractor in a bottle. It can have so many different uses. So it was one of the Young Living favorites. If you came in after 2013, you may not know that in Hong Kong, Valor isn't as popular, because when we first started, they had to take it away from the Everyday Oil Kit, and then they called it the Premium Starter Kit. And then not only was the Valor out of stock, there was also a lot of blends that went out of stock, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. And so Valor, Black Spruce was one of the key ingredients in Valor. And back in 2013, something happened to our supplier. It was a family farm out of northern Quebec, which is very cold. And something happened to the farm. I don't remember whether it was the family that retired, or in the beginning, it was a very cold winter, and it was so cold that they couldn't get into the trees to harvest. That was one of the answers, one of the reasons that Gary told me. And then later on, I heard that the family just decided that they will retire. And so we ran out of Black Spruce. And the purpose of Black Spruce, I don't know if you have that oil. It's one of my favorite. I use it on everything. And I love the smell. I diffuse it. I put it on my skin. I put it on my face, and it has a really powerful energy. And I'm going to talk about that later to explain why. Northern Lights black spruce, these black spruce can grow in very harsh environments. It can grow in extreme cold or extreme hot weather. It is, the tree itself can bend and stretch. And there are also some that are very strong with a big tree trunk. There's some that is very skinny with a small tree trunk, only about this big. It could already be like 40 years old. It's very bendy because the weather in that northern part of Canada is very harsh. It gets very cold. It gets minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter, sometimes minus 50 with wind chill, and it gets to 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer. And it also gets it can get very windy, and the black spruce tree can withstand all of that. And we use it as the locals use the oil as mosquito repellent. They use it for first aid. They use it for skin hydration and keeping the air moisturized, because it's so cold. They're always running the heater, and when you're running the heater, it gets really dry. And so when we diffuse it, we notice that the air doesn't get that dry anymore. It can support your respiratory system. It's also great for cell repair. It's really good. It's amazing for joints. I know the local people use it for the joints, and it has a very mild, gentle taste and smell, and it's very mild and gentle on the skin. It has a very similar texture as frankincense, and you can actually use it like frankincense. And I know the ancient people, the natives, use the resin from the tree to put in water and to boil it, and they use it to cure, to treat a lot of different various chronic disease. And the thing with the cell, the one that I'm not supposed to be talking about, that's what the native people use the resin for. Because we were talking to the natives, so we know, and they know about the black spruce trees. So I'm going to show you the blends that Gary has put black spruce in. So chivalry, motivation, Exodus 2, and vision, hope, rise above, one heart, one voice. I think it's in one purpose. Trauma life, humility, gathering, surrender, inspiration, and there's more. White Angelica, valor, present time, inner child, harmony. Abundance, relieve it, Christmas spirit, RC, sniffle ease, peace and calming, Shutron. Highest potential, exciting, higher unity, genius, kid power, reconnect, Egyptian gold, light the fire, the gift, live your passion, journey on, three wise men, grounding, and sacred mountain. So this single oil is probably the most used in the most blends. The reason, I actually separated these oils into uses. So you can know that chivalry is to give you like courage and a sense of strength, right? Integrity, the sense of integrity, the sense of rightness, the sense of fairness, the sense of responsibility and accountability, right? That's chivalry. Motivation is to move you forward, and you need confidence to move forward. Exodus 2 is also to move forward, is to escape from the old and have the courage to pave the new road, right? And vision, it's to see into the future, to have hope and vision and hope and gratitude, to have that gratitude, to have that inner calmness and inner great gratitude and feel the blessing. Hope is for people to change their life, and for people who are hopeless, who don't see the future, who feels like there's no future, to feel like there's a future. Rise above is to become better, right? One heart, one voice is to connect with yourself and to speak from your heart, to speak and to voice out and to say the things that do the right thing. Trauma life is to release you from the trauma of life and the traumatic events and the traumatic emotions that may be hindering you in moving forward. Humility, another connection to yourself and to your heart. Gathering, to bring people together for that camaraderie, for that confidence. Surrender, to allow things to happen, to have trust to the universe. Inspiration, to give you ideas, and the connection between the earth and you and the skies, right? The heavens, the spirits, the connection, right? white angelica for protection, for moving forward, valor, we've talked about it, present time, to live in the present, to be connected to ourselves and to the ground. Inner child, to be connected to the true me, right? The truth, harmony, to connect with all of us, to all of myself and to everybody, and to be calm and peace and calming and abundance, relieve it for joints, Christmas spirit, the liveliness of Christmas, the happiness. RC for respiratory, sniffle is for respiratory, peace and calming, Chutron for hormones, highest potential, to moving forward, excite, to have that excitement, to connect, higher unity, to connect with everybody. Genius, kid power is the strength, right? Genius and kid power, I call it the valor for the kids. Genius is like brain power for kids. Reconnect. Sacred mountain, the strength, grounding, the connection to the earth, the connection to your source. Three wise men, to remove emotional traumatic memories that's connected with your experience. Journey on, live with passion, the gift, light the fire, right? Egyptian gold. Can you imagine not having any of these oils when Black Spruce was out of stock? There's like 30 or 40 blends. We have 153 blends, if I remember correctly. And 50 of them were out of stock because of Black Spruce. And Valor is the oil that can change your life. I mean, all these oils are oils that can change your life, right? So to show you why Black Spruce. So the tree, the Black Spruce tree, I'm going to show you photos of the different spruces. Excuse me. White spruce, this is what it looks like. So this is like the common Christmas tree that we see. It's very common. It grows all over North America. It's very easy to get. We also use white spruce in some of our blends, but we do not sell it as a single. Blue spruce, a lot of people know about this. It's sort of like, they look different. It has a bluish tint to the green. That's why it's called blue spruce. And when you break it up, you can actually see the dark blue in the leaves, in the cones, like not cones, but in between the leaves. Black spruce is most of them are very skinny. And how you notice this is the little skinny part on the tip and the part like an arrow. So Gary always said that this is like an arrow that connects to the heavens, right? Connect to the top, to the realm, right? And it's much skinnier. That's why it's very bendy. Of course, I can also show you like gigantic trees of Black Spruce later. So Gary, I remember that because we were opening Hong Kong in 2013 and we were out of stock 2013, 2014 with Black Spruce. And I remember that I was very close with Tyler. Well, I am still friends with him. He was our Young Living Hong Kong general manager. They moved to Tyler from the US, from headquarters to Hong Kong to open the Hong Kong market. And we were helping him establish the Hong Kong market and setting up the office. And I remember when we were out of Valor for so long and Peace and Calming for so long, Peace and Calming and Valor were both in the starter kit, the everyday oil kit. And RC was one of the most bestsellers, right? And I remember Tyler told me that everybody was telling Gary to use white spruce, but he just said, we can't do it. It's not the same oil. Although it's still called spruce, I would rather go out of stock than put something that, and then to replace Black Spruce with something that is not right. So, and I remember that very, very vividly. And it was a big thing. Gary kept saying that. And the thing was, back then we were buying the oil from a family farm from Quebec, and it's had a very long relationship with Gary. And once that we couldn't get it from that farm, so we were trying to source it. And there was a batch of Black Spruce that came, and Gary sniffed it and said, no, it's not right. And then they tested it, and of course it didn't meet Gary's standard. So we sent it back, we rejected it. And after about 6 months, another batch of Black Spruce came. Somebody found some Black Spruce, and they gave it to Gary. And Gary said, no, this is the same batch that you sent me, you showed me 6 months ago. And they're like, no, we got it from another source. And then they tested the oil, and indeed it was exactly the same as the batch that came 6 months ago. And interestingly enough, other company, when we rejected it, other company did buy it. So other company had black spruce. However, it was not a very popular oil. It was not very common to have black spruce back then. So the other company was using it for some other products. So anyway, so the black spruce trees, you can see that it's very tall and it's connected to the heavens, and it has been known to have very high power because it absorbs the northern lights. And the cause of the northern lights, I've got a photo here to explain what actually northern lights is. I'm going to read out a little bit to you. As the electronics hit the air molecules, and then the molecules will get excited and start moving very quickly, and then the molecules will give off light as they calm down. So they call it a solar storm. Actually, when we go to Northern Lights, we download apps, and they have measurements that if they can measure the solar storm, the strength of the solar storm, they can predict if the Northern Lights is going to be strong. So so this is the Earth, and the reason why is you can only see it in the aurora oval, is the tip, the northern part and the southern part of the Earth. So you can only see Northern Lights on the northern part. And when the solar wind comes, and there's a magnetic sheath around the Earth, and the water molecules in the air creates this movement, and when they calm down, they create lights. Okay, and it's just light in the air. And many years ago, Gary spent some time studying with Lakota Indians tribes, with the elders, listening to their stories and learning from them. And one of them that he learned from was the Lakota shaman Wallace Black Elk. So I got a photo, and he's actually very popular. You can actually, I actually got this book. It's his teachings. And Black Elk tells how each spring the Lakota Indians made their way north to what is now known as Canada. That was before the Canadian border was set, to experience and absorb the healing nights and the majestic power of the Northern Lights. They would stand under the field of light energy and dance to the melody of Northern Lights. And the natives still use, when there's Northern Lights, they still do a lot of ceremony, and they still praise the skies. And the people of Lakota believe that these captivating lights and energy and melody have the power to boost their energy and assist in their healing. And they would stand under the field of light energy, dancing in the air of the melody of Northern Lights, and stretch out their hands and draw this heavenly energy into their bodies, breathe into their bodies, and push healing vibrations up their spine. And in the 1800s, when the political border between the United States and Canada was in place, the Lakota tribe could no longer travel north to experience the annual healing ritual. So later, they used each other's fingertips and an eagle feather to swipe the spine to simulate the process of absorbing energy from the Northern Lights. And that is where Gary got the idea to feather the spine with the Raindrop Technique. We've experienced it personally. When there are Northern Lights, when you raise your hands, you can actually feel tingling sensations on the tip of your fingers, because of the magnetic field. I've got a lot of friends, and I personally have experienced it too. When you reach out, when you're absorbing that Northern Lights, you feel this, and I'm even thinking about it, it's feeling it, that healing power of vibration. Oh my God, I'm feeling it right now. And it's pretty amazing. Yeah. So in the book, the Seed to Seal book, as I talk about in every lesson, Gary wrote this, and I think he actually connected to the source and wrote this letter for us. And I'm going to read it out. It's quite touching. I translated it into Chinese, and when I was reading it, a lot of them really got touched. And the photo here is the first distillation. It's all sold out. It also came with a first distillation of the floral water of the hydrosol. I am here now, here to fulfill my mission as told by the ancient people. No one would hear me, but after thousands of years, I have been released to do what I was created to do for the children of this world. The ancient people call me Black Spruce of the Northern Lights. because my branches touch the dancing colors in the sky, intertwining Mother Earth's strength with the mysterious of the heavens. I bring light to the darkness of mind, release spiritual blockages, and free the bondage that some humans call emotions, which can lead to the deterioration of life. I live in an extremely harsh environment with challenging growing conditions, climate changes that drop to 80 Fahrenheit below, and howling winds with a wind chill of up to minus 120 Fahrenheit. Summer temperature reaches 90 degrees Fahrenheit with long daylight hours that never see darkness in some areas of the Northern Hemisphere, in dramatic contrast to the short daylight hours in the winter that don't see the sun for weeks at a time. I live with the extremes of Mother Earth so I can deal with the extremes of humankind. I am one of the least explored by modern man because I'm looked upon as dwarfed and ugly. I am considered a non-productive scrub, trees with no value, but I can help others find their value when they're dwarfed emotionally. Wild animals do not sleep beneath me, as my skinny branches offer little shelter from the freezing wind and snow. Yet they gather around me. They feel my energy, which increases their circulation, warming them up. I'm not here to be shelter for protection or a crutch to bear the burdens of the world. I'm here to give you strength that teaches self-reliance, which helps all creatures become secure as I am. I'm here to help the human race to build a relationship with the Creator, not looking to the Creator as a protector, but to understand that He made all living things have the power to be strong, adding purpose to creation, not taking energy, but giving back. Humans are co-creators with the Master of the universe and must come to understand their God-given power over all the elements, as He gave to me, to own their greatness and to become what they were created to be. My roots can attach to anything, and I never blow over because I am so strong. My molecules bring strength to the human core so that people can feel grounded and never be defeated by the problems they encounter. Men must be able to anchor to any conditions at any time, anywhere, and be able to adjust and adapt. This is what keeps me alive and will help humans find success as they partner with the Great Spirit in their journey of life. Hold and cherish my essence. Let it help you grow. Learn and explore your God-given potential to know who you are and have the power within you to change the world with just your thoughts and be a living example of your creation. The ancient treasured our sister White Spruce, which will soon come to teach another dimensions of truth and knowledge. Be ready, for she works fast and is not as patient as her brother. I work more on the physical, but she works on the spiritual to help you become independent in preparing for your partnership with the Great Spirit. Our brother Blue Spruce is universal and grows in many different regions of the world. Our earthly powers work well together to help you find balance as you seek highest potential in your journey through life. The ancient people of the North look down and give thanks that we have joined together with the Great Spirit for the support and well-beings of his people and Mother Earth. So I feel very connected to this letter and I feel very touched. And I feel like I am going to douse myself with Black Spruce right after I read this letter. And I hope it does the same to you or something similar to you. Yeah. And oh, I'm only seeing all the comments right now. Sorry. Hi, guys. Okay. And and before I talked about how he built the farm, before I delve into more details, I would like to show you a timeline about the things that we talked about, starting from when he got sick from Ecuador, okay? When he got bitten by that insect that gave him Chagas disease. Now we know what happened, but back then nobody did. And so remember how back in 2010, December, when he was bitten by the insect, and then he flew to France, and then he flew to Oman, and then he flew to Ethiopia, and then he went back home to, well, he called it Alpine because that's where he is, his family is. It's about an hour's drive from Salt Lake City. And then he went back to Salt Lake, and then he went to winter harvest in Highland Flats in Idaho. Well, yeah, in Idaho. And subsequently, in the summer, and well, we talked a little bit about what happened in between when he also went to the Middle East to look for to build a distillery in Oman, okay, 2010. And between these 2 or 3 years, he was also very busy. And 2013 summer, he built the cabins in winter in Idaho, Highland Flats. And then around the same time, we launched Nitro, and he broke his back during this video that I showed you. 2013, he built a distillery in the winter in Highland Flats, and he did that. And then 2014, so between 2013, we went out of stock. 2014 in the winter, he bought the land in August, I think, and then he started building the distillery in September. In fact, he built the distillery in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, if I remember correctly. However, because the boiler was not approved by the government, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, they only were managed to start first distillation in 2015 in March or in January, I think. I will show you the photos. And after he built the distillery in Fort Nelson, he went on in the same year of 2015, he went to Nepal and rebuilt Nepal. And then 2016, he hurt his hand, and then he went into the saga of all the health problems, and he was grounded not to fly. And then as soon as he were allowed to fly, he flew to Alaska and did the dog sled in the cold, harsh winter. And then he passed, and then he got really sick 2018 in January, finally passed away in May. So he did all of this while he had the Chagas disease, okay? And so let me tell you a little bit about Black Spruce. This is a map of Canada. Black Spruce can only grow in very cold parts in North America. And you can see in this map, all the green part is where Black Spruce grow. And Gary sent letters to all the Canadian provinces, provincial government, hoping to buy a farm that grows Black Spruce trees. And finally, interestingly enough, the only city government that replied was Fort Nelson. And he immediately flew up to Fort Nelson, it's somewhere around here, to investigate and to check out the land. And then it turned out that the land that he could buy was right next on Alaskan Highway. And it was the highway that goes from the US to Alaska through here, this part of Canada. And interestingly, remember when he first found a job after his injury, he was a truck driver, and that's what he did. He trucked through from the US, from Idaho, up through Alaskan Highway to Alaska. So he was very familiar with that road. And I still remember when he was building the farm, I offered to go and visit him during Thanksgiving. And he said, oh, it's very easy. You don't need an address. When you drive through Alaskan Highway, you see it on the left. I'm like, okay. Now I know, because I know where it is, right? But one time we were there, I was there with some staff, because when I won my 5x5 award for farm, we flew up there to record the video. And I was with the two staff, and we drove on the highway they've never been. And I missed the farm. I missed the farm. We went to the workshop, and I'm like, okay, if this is the workshop, we just missed it. So, and I've been there like 3 times already, but usually in the winter when it's like all snowy and covered in snow, that was the first time I was there in the summer. So it's just a little trickier. So anyway, so he was very fond of that area because he used to drive by there all the time. And it was a little town that he used to stop by. And a lot of truckers stop in Fort Nelson because it's right on the highway. And so that to like refill the supplies or take a night nap and stuff like that. Anyway, so that was all these trees are the Black Spruce trees. And this is Quebec. And it was in the northern parts of Quebec was where we used to source our Black Spruce and little farm. And Quebec is really cold too. So it's about the same. Let's see. Oh, this is Yukon. Fort Nelson is somewhere around here. Okay. All right, there you go. Young Living Northern Lights Farm. And this is Idaho. Right? Is this Idaho? No, this is Utah, our headquarters. This is Utah. So Black Spruce can only grow in this. So to give you context, this is the Canadian map, and this is where Fort Nelson is, and this is how big the town is. Okay, small town with 2,000 people at the time. Now only about a little bit over 1,000 people who live there. Back then in 2013, when Gary bought the land, there were about 2,000 people. As a town that relies mainly on logging and oil refinery. And at the most prosperous time, there were over 20,000 people engaged in the oil industry. They lived here, they traveled through here, and life there was busy and it was flourished and people were happy, they were making money. But when Gary went there, it was just the start of like a recession for them. And then I'll show you another map. This is Northern Lights Farm. It's 10 minutes away from Fort Nelson. This is the highway that has no cars. You can literally like lie here for 5 minutes and there will be nothing happens to you because nobody drives by. And it's 16 kilometers away, but it's 10 minutes drive. And this is actually the most convenient of all our farms. It's 10 minutes from town with 21 hotels in this little small town, 2 supermarkets, a health food store, and about 5 to 6 restaurants. And when Gary just bought the land, it was 2014 in the summer. It was in August when it was my first diamond retreat. We were in France. And I remember the dinner, the first night, the dinner, he was so excited. He showed us this photo. And I saw trees. And he's like, okay, we bought this 286 acres of land. This is our future farm. This actually was the photo that I took that he showed us. And it's about a kilometer square if you're into like kilometers. And he was so excited. And he was talking about, I'm going to put a distillery here. I'm going to put you can all see my cursor, right? I'm going to put the distillery here, and I'm going to put you see here, this is flat. It's perfect. And I'm going to put a visitor center here, and I'm going to build a workshop here, and I'm going to build a museum. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, huh, what? And I only saw trees. And it really reminded me of when he bought the land in Ecuador and when he brought Mary to see the farm. And he was so excited, telling Mary, I'm going to build a distillery here. I'm going to find water, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to build that. And you can see that he could see it in his mind's eye. And Mary said, all I saw was a jungle. And to me, this photo was trees. And he was so excited. You can feel that the excitement was filling his body, and his eyes were twinkling, and he was just smiling. And the interesting thing is, you can see our distillery is actually here, and this is where we watch the Northern Lights. But everything is it's ours. And then we actually have a house here rented, leased to us, and this is where the members will stay during winter harvests. So it's on the farm, and this is the lake where we will be snowmobiling in the winter because this lake is frozen, and it's beautiful. And I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, this is a place out of nowhere. And then he said, I'm going to be building like a cabin where members can stay overnight when they're here for the harvest. And I'm going to build a large hall where we're going to be doing all the education about oils, about health. And it's going to be able to sit 100 people. And he was so excited. And I thought, this is a place out of nowhere. Who's going to go? Who's going to go? And why does he want to build a visitor center? And you know what? After the first Northern Lights winter harvest in 2017, and between when COVID just hit in March 2020, I've been there 6 times, and about 300 members from Hong Kong have been there. So yes, I know why he wants to build a visitor center. It was just a vision that I couldn't see, right? But it's a vision that I can see now. And hopefully we can bring more people there, because there is enough hotels for now to stay for the 20 hotels. The 12 hotels. So I've done my research to 12 hotels, 21, 12, I think. I don't know, I think. Well, anyway, but still a lot of hotels for a little town like this. And so this is the land, right? And Gary, because he wasn't Canadian, and in order to apply for permits and everything, he needed a Canadian. So we asked Ben Halden. It was the perfect match, because Ben was in constructions before before he started with Young Living. So, and he's Canadian, so he knows how to apply for permits. He knows how to apply for different licenses and all the processes for approval. So I remember that year in 2014, we were at cruise, and I was in Gary's, I don't remember why I was in Gary's room, and he was talking to Ben, and he was talking to Ben Howden. He was showing him the plans and the blueprints, because I saw the blueprints of the distillery. He was showing Ben the blueprints and telling him his plans. He was asking if Ben could help, if Ben was willing to move back to Fort Nelson and help him build the distillery. The problem was Ben's wife, Carol, who was the one who started with Young Living, had a lot of health issues that would not allow her to live in the harsh colds. And that's why Ben and Carol actually moved from Fort Nelson to Victoria Island, where it's much warmer, the climate is much more milder. In the winter in Victoria Island, the winter goes down to only about 35 degrees. It doesn't even freeze most of the time. It doesn't snow there. The summer is amazing, it's warm. And that's why they moved down south. And when when Gary asked Ben if they could help, Ben had to really think about it, because he knows that it was going to take a toll on Carol's health. But if he doesn't help Gary, who is going to help? He was the crown, he was the diamond in Young Living, who had the experience and who was a Canadian and who is help, the perfect person to help, because he also was into constructions. He had the knowledge and he had the experience. And then Gary thought, we need more people. So Gary called Ben's son, Corey, who was living in the Philippines back then. And Corey actually was in the oil industry and he was running his own oil business in the Philippines. And he had a really good life in the Philippines, because in the Philippines, we can hire helpers and we can hire drivers, just like in Hong Kong. I actually have 2 helpers who live in with me and who help me take care of my kids and take care of the house. And it's very affordable. And that was the life that Ben and his wife Marnie was living in the Philippines. And Corey and his wife Marnie, and Corey said to me, if it was Ben who called me and asked me to help, I would not have said yes. But because it's Gary, and Gary really helped us, our family, our health, and I really know Gary, and because Gary called me, so I went. So Corey and his wife Marnie dropped everything at home and flew to Canada. And that was actually around the same time when Corey got married, and helped with building the farm. And really, we honestly really have to thank the Howdens for this farm. If it weren't for them, I don't think Gary would have been able to do it without the Howdens. I am eternally grateful for them. I'm very grateful. They're an amazing family. And I am so happy when the Howdens made Royal, and the Royal celebration was the last public event that Gary attended in 2018 in January, before he got gravely sick. And this was a photo that was taken on that day. It was a Monday, and on Wednesday, Gary went into the hospital and then went gravely sick and never recovered. So I feel like I have to show this photo of the Howdens getting the red carpet treatment as Royal during the time when they were building the farm, 2014 to 2015 in the winter. It took a toll on Carol's health. This was Carol. This photo was taken before the snow hit. So this photo must have been taken in September or late August, because in mid-September, late September, they start snowing already. And it was very difficult, honestly, for Marnie's wife to adapt to life in Fort Nelson. It was cold. She was alone with her kids, and it was just difficult. And the sacrifices the Howden family made for Young Living, it's immeasurable. Like we could never thank them enough. So that's why I believe they deserve a shout out in this presentation. And Corey continued to stay there even after the farm, because Corey knew Gary's heart, and Corey needed to make sure that everything follows exactly what Gary wanted. And I am very happy to say that Corey now overlooks the farm, the corporate farm, the worldwide farms, along with Brad Packer and Chris Packer, which I talked about last week. And I'm so happy that Ben and Carol's organization, their organization took a toll because they were dedicated all their time into building the farms. And after that whole year in 2015, after the farm was built, Carol went in and out of the hospital many times. She was very ill. I could not see her over the next 2 years while she was recovering. She could not attend any of the Young Living events, the convention and everything, because she was so sick. And yeah, so I thought that was so important to talk about, because there's so many amazing people in Young Living that is really willing to help, right? And then not only that, not only the Howdens, Gary also sent an email to all the members and asked if anybody's willing to help. I was ready to go and help just to cook, but I had 2 kids at home. And so these were the people who helped: Scott Schuler, Dave Powell, Chip Cow, and Mark. You may recognize them. Oh, what's going on with all the typo? You may recognize the faces from the Highland Fats Farm photos, because they're so used to knowing, and they were so used to working with Gary before in Winter Harvest. So they dropped everything and they flew there and they worked through the winter, September to March. They all went home during Christmas. Actually, they all went home from Thanksgiving in late November until Christmas, because Gary sent them home. Gary's like, you guys have to go home to your family. But Gary stayed. And I remember that was the year that I went to my platinum retreat in Ecuador, the second time I went to Ecuador, and Gary wasn't there. And it was right before Thanksgiving, and I was ready to fly up there to spend Thanksgiving with him. And I called him, and he didn't answer the phone. And so I did it. And I called the Howdens. I couldn't find them. So I'm like, okay, I can't just fly to Fort Nelson and not know where it is. Anyway, so thanks to Scott Schuler, Mark, Chip, and Dave. They built the farm, and Gary was so grateful. And I remember Gary said it's like family, because they've worked with them for so long. They don't like say garbage. They don't talk nothing, and they just work, right? And they so follow Gary's instruction. It was a machine well oiled. Is that how we say it in English? So we're very grateful for them. And these photos I got from the Seed to Seal book. It looks very familiar. If you don't know where this is, it would be meaningless if you don't know why. If you don't know why we're showing photos of farm, it's meaningless. But if you know the story behind why we have these photos, it means 1,000 words, right? And it's very similar to when he built the farm in Ecuador, when he built the distillery in Highland Flats, and now in Fort Nelson. But this is in freezing weather, and they had to fight against time because they had to open the land before it froze, right? And look at these photos. If you don't know the background, it's just a construction site. But this is a man who was running the largest essential oil company in the world, $2 billion company. And he could honestly be sitting in an office somewhere in the aircon and delegate this project to a project manager to oversee. And yet there he is, getting his hands dirty, risking his life, making sure that everything works. And the temperature of the soil falls way before zero for half the year. So they had to work on this before the ground freezes, right? And because it freezes half the year between October to April, they have to make sure that all the underground pipes must be dug deep, below 10 feet, and at least with 4 inches of thermal insulation. And this is all from Gary's research and his education and his knowledge on building a farm. He built a farm in Ecuador. He was faced with not being able to cool the water fast enough, so the oil and the floor water would separate. And here he was met with the challenge to make sure that the pipes do not freeze in the winter. Okay, and you can see that in this photo. He worked through, this is the distillery. They managed to build this much before it crazily froze over. And you can see that in the winter, if you work through the winter, everything freezes. And the severe cold make it very, very difficult to work because the machines won't work. And if you had walked in the freezing cold of minus 30 degrees, you would know that your breath freezes. And when you're inhaling cold air into the lungs, it really hurt you. And that's why Carol had such problems with her health. And that's also why Gary eventually, we all felt that Gary eventually really, really took a toll on Gary's health because of what happened to him in Ecuador. The Chagas was already invading his lungs, right? And every day there was only about 2 hours. I remember when we were there in the winter, and it was always March when we were there, and it was warmer. They call it warmer already. And in December and January, the temperature would go below minus 120 degrees. And the sun, when I was there in March, the sun comes up at 10:30 and sets around 4. And in December and January, the sun comes up at around 11 and sets at 1 or 2. So you only had about 2 hours of sunlight. And so building and had to be done during that 2-3 hours of limited sunlight. So the repair work must have been done at night. And at night, it's even colder, right? And so Gary actually injured himself many, many, many times, slipping on the ice, slipping on the machinery, hitting his legs and breaking his legs so many times and spraining his ankle. And he insisted on working through his injuries because he was racing against time. And the CFO back then, there were so many people who tried to convince Gary to wait until the weather was more mild, say in March, to restart the work. But he said, I cannot wait. People cannot wait. They're waiting for valor. They're waiting for the oils to change life, and our oils save people. These people's life cannot wait. So we have to work through the winter. And I remember that this working through the winter actually, oh no, it's in Chinese. I forgot to translate this page, but I can talk about it. You can see the photos. They were working through the winter, and it was like minus 30, minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit. And he actually asked the volunteers to go home first, and he continued. And I remember that working through the winter cost over $4 million more. This number is incorrect. It costs $4 million more than working in the summer, working when the winter isn't that harsh, when the weather wasn't that cold. So, but everybody urged Gary to stop and wait because it was so dangerous and it was costing so much. But Gary said, we have to, and it's not about money. So he did build the farm through the winter. So although he built the distillery in 20 days, he continued to have to build every part of it. But the problem that we could not start the distillation process was because the boiler had to be approved by the government. And this is the boiler, this is the size. So you see this person here. And let me read out this part of the Gary Young blog from Gary when he was working on the farm, on the Young Living Northern Lights aromatic farm. We're working every day, 7 days a week at the Northern Lights farm. We're pushing forward. And though we've had a lot of unforeseen delays related to regulations unique to Canada, we're doing a lot of work to get production really going. Because of Canada's regulations, we are still waiting to start the new distillery boiler and have had to put in equipment that we've never had to install before to meet specific requirements. We even brought an X-ray machine and an X-rayed every weld on every pipe in the distillery. We have also put in specialized water treatment systems because the water has to be a specific pH for the better specifications. Because I don't use chemicals to get the water's pH where it needs to be, we had to actually have a water treatment system built. If I had compromised and gone with chemicals, we would probably be in operation already. After many inspections and approvals, we're now just waiting on the provincial government in the province of Victoria, in the province of British Columbia, to issue a permit to hook up and fire up the boiler. It's been a mammoth undertaking, a marathon project, working at temperature down to minus 44 degrees below zero. In the meantime, I've been cutting, chipping, stockpiling black spruce trees so we can start distilling immediately once the boiler is on. As of right now, everything is showing promise that we will be distilling the Northern Lights by mid-March at the latest. So this project has lasted 4 months longer than I had anticipated when we first started, and the costs have been substantial. We're almost there. So the reason why the boiler had to be tested and over-tested over again, it was because of the regulations and the person who tests the boilers, he had no experience in testing boilers that do not put chemicals, and he had no idea how to do it. And he was very reluctant to approve. So Gary had to prove to him that the boiler actually works and is very safe. And also we had to work through a lot of the holidays, through the Canadian holidays, for Thanksgiving in October. And this specific person who approves and who come to inspect is the person who does it all over Canada. So he was traveling a lot. So it caused a lot of delay. So my next slide has a recording showing Kevin LaRose, who is our farm manager in the Northern Lights farm. He will explain why our boiler took so long to approve and what is the difference between our boiler and other boilers that they were used to approving. Okay, the video credit was taken by our gold leader, Christina. Very grateful for this video. Let me play. I hope you can hear the sound.
And do you know if there's another boiler like this in the whole of Canada?
I'm sure there's lots, but there's one thing that's completely different about our boiler than any other boiler in Canada, is that ours has no chemicals in it.
Oh, that's the main point.
What do people use for these? What's the purpose of the boiler? Like
Heating. I know a lot of like textile companies use them. Universities use them to heat their entire facility.
What if chemicals? I mean, why would people put chemicals?
For oxygen scavenging. So the more oxygen you have in your water, the more likely it is to rust and corrode. And that can be damaging to the boiler. Another one is for scale. So what that is it's basically a hard layer that forms on the tubes. And the thicker layer of scale you have, the less heat transfer there is from the fire to the water to create the steam. So the more you build up, the more likely you are to have a failure in your boiler. There's a bunch of other ones. Phosphates, sulfates, flocculants. What those are is basically, even though the water coming in is filtered, there's always going to be a little bit of debris that comes in with it. So the flocculants, what they do is they make them attractive to each other. So they'll bunch together and then fall to the bottom of the boiler. So your boiler's not, doesn't build up with dirty water. So when you steam it, all that debris is going to be left behind and your steam's going to go clean. So after a while, you can get a dirty layer in your boiler. So we empty it out every couple months and fill it back up. But we have to do a few different things because we're not using chemicals.
What do we do?
So every 6 months we have to shut the boiler down for a week, drain it and open up. Like these are the manholes, the handholes, manholes. I gotta take like that plug off that pipe. So basically we gotta inspect the entire internals of the boiler and make sure that scale isn't building up, rust isn't building up in there. Just as a safety precaution, because we don't use those chemicals in there, that can accelerate that process. So we just retubed this, which is basically opening it up, cutting out all the tubes inside there. There's 178 tubes in there, I believe. So we had to cut every single one out, put brand new tubes in there. We did that February of 2017. A week before distributor harvest.
a week before we came.
Yay!
So it was still going on a little bit when the first group got here, but by the second group we had it all closed up and buttoned up. So it was a stressful couple of weeks because we couldn't make oil during those weeks. But now that those fresh tubes are in there, our boiler's good for minimum 5 years before we even have to start worrying about it again. We do a little bit of water treatment, and the only thing we really do is put it through a water softener, and that'll take out a lot of that scaling. Hard water basically is what causes that. And that's basically what it does, is it takes out the calcium and the magnesium out of the water and replaces it with sodium. So sodium is soluble in water, it'll carry through in steam, and it's basically salt. Whereas the calcium and the magnesium produce that hard scale, which can affect the boiler's efficiency. And after a long period of time, that can really do some damage to it.
That's an amazing information to have.
But-
because, yes.
I mean, with chemicals, I mean, when we told our regulatory body, so we got the Technical Safety BC, which kind of regulates boilers. So when we told him, our inspector, that we weren't putting chemicals in there, his arms flew up in the air and red flags got up, because he never heard of a boiler not being run with chemicals before. And basically we told him, if we have to shut the boiler down every year and gut it and rebuild it every year, that's what we'll do. Because as soon as we put chemicals in here, we can't use this boiler.
I remember Gary told me that.
Yeah.
When he was setting this up, he could not find an inspector who knows how to inspect a boiler that has
Yeah.
no chemicals in it.
Exactly.
He had to teach him. That's why I asked that question just now.
So what we had to do originally is every 3 months open it up. And then we did that for 2 years. And we made reports. So every 3 months I had to write a 30-page report with pictures and send that into him so he can review it and make sure we are still safe with our boiler. And then after 2 years, we got that extended to 6 months. So before, every 3 months, so we'd have to shut it down for about a week. And then if he was on holidays or something when I sent my report in, I'd have to wait for him to get back, because I couldn't close it up before he got, gave me his little check mark. So that usually would affect us for 1 week in our season. So our season's only 6 months long. So we would have to shut down for a week in the middle of our season. So we finally got him to agree to 6 months. So now we can run our full season without having to shut down for a week, and stop making oil, stop production. And now we can go till the end of our season. Then we can shut it down, inspect it, and then fire it back up after that.
I remember Gary told us that when he was setting up the farm, this was the reason why the distillation had to be deferred, because they wouldn't approve the boiler without chemicals.
There was a lot of red tape we had to cut through, and one of those conditions was the 3 months inspection. Is that the only way they would let us turn it on is, okay, after 3 months, open it up and we'll prove to you that we could run it without chemicals. Because again, they'd never seen a boiler run without chemicals before. Usually, when he first came in, he said, okay, well, where's your chemical injection port? Because usually, there's a pipe on the side that goes right into the boiler, and that just, all day long, that just injects chemicals in there. So
Yeah,
when we
and-
didn't have one, we had to convince him
Yeah.
that it was, the way we had to
When
run.
Gary told me, I didn't understand. I only knew the concept, but now that he explained to me, because I remember he said the farm was actually ready to distill at the end of September, but we couldn't because of the boiler issue, and the guy was on holiday, and so he started inspecting in October, but we couldn't fire it up because we had to wait October, November, and December. Eventually, at the end of January, we could run it, right?
We got our permit. Well, we could run it for testing.
Yes, not
In
for
January. So we finally got our permit on March 18th of 2015. That was my first day of work. So that was the when we first got our operating permit. We were allowed to run it.
Yeah. And today is the 16th.
That's right. Yeah. So
Yeah,
2 more
tomorrow.
days.
Yeah,
5 years exactly.
Anniversary.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, that was why we had questions for you. Amazing, because this is such important information to send out to the
It
world.
is, yeah.
Because nobody understands this, and people always talk about how do you prove that you don't have chemicals? What's the difference? So we talk about the water, we talk about the gas, we talk about the distillation, and every single part of it. I always said that it takes Gary at least 2 hours to explain, why our products are better, at least from growing from the seed to the soil to the water that watered the farm and to the what we put into the soil and all of that until really the sealing part. It's incredible what we do. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, this was the next slide. That was actually an excerpt of the seed to seal presentation that I did for Biocode Academy last year, 2021. It was a little excerpt of the boiler because I went through the seed to seal farm. I went to seed to seal process during the Biocode Symposium. I did two presentations for Dr. Ollie. The first one was a tour of the Northern Lights farm. That was the part of the video that I took out of that presentation. And then the second presentation I did for him was to explain the seed to seal process. Anyway, so I felt that that was really important information about the boiler. I have never heard anybody talk about our boilers during the seed to seal process. And I feel like we have to tell everybody about every single part of our processes. That's why our oils are so different. And it was because of that, it was so delayed. And let me go back a little bit to talk about when he built the farm. And right, Janie, it's incredible. Like, we have to get this information out there. And Gary would rather not get approved than to use any kind of chemicals. And he knew how to use salt to neutralize the calcium and the magnesium too, because the water in Canada, especially the northern parts of Canada, is very, very hard. So even when you go to the tap water, it created a lot of scale because the water has so much minerals in it. So let me go back to when the little bit background. Remember when I talked about the Ecuador farm, how the locals, people in the town of Chongqing, did not welcome Gary and wanted to send him away. And then when he was in France, the French people didn't want to teach him anything in the beginning. And now here comes Canada. When he went to Fort Nelson and he bought the land and he said that he was going to build an oil farm there, everybody thought it was oil and gas. Like, the Fort Nelson people thought that it was oil and gas, and they did not like Gary. They wanted to send him away. They were not helpful. They thought that this American person is going to come and take our resources and leave, just like those American companies in the oil and gas industry and the logging industry. They came and they came in and conquered the. They came and they ruined our city. They ruined the people's life, and then they leave. So they were very unhappy. And why? Because there's a background. So as I said, the Fort Nelson economy was based mostly from gas and logging. And many of these oil company left at around 2013, 2014, around that same time when Gary was building the farm, the distillery. And when they left these people jobless, right? They just took off and they left. And they left these people jobless. Their health was in turmoil because the oil refining progress produced a lot of toxins. So they had a lot of illnesses with their respiratory system. And so when they heard this American was coming to set up an oil company, a distillery, they thought this was that kind of oil. So they did not welcome him. And while he was building the farm, they weren't very helpful. But after more than a year after the distillation, so they started the distillery, the first distillation in 2015 in March. And then subsequently the whole year, that was, I remember, and then in 2017, they opened up winter harvest for us. It was interesting because there was actually no winter harvest in Fort Nelson before. It was only in Highland Flats. But that year in 2016, when I left winter harvests, I talked to Gary and I said, I'll come back next year. We'll do it again. I'm going to bring my team. And he said, and I told him, I said, I'll come the first week also. And he said to me, he said, no, come the last week. I said, why? Because he said, last week is always very emotional for me. And I'd like you to be here with your team because yeah, so and then when 2017, when the winter harvest opened, registration opened, we couldn't get in because they were doing it they opened it for the US first, and international we didn't know until it was full. So I sent an email to Gary and I said, we couldn't get into the winter harvest. I can't come. If you can open one more week for me, then we can come. Or if you open Fort Nelson, then we can do it there. So after about a month, they opened Fort Nelson winter harvest, and they had to limit attendees to 16 per week, because back then we did not have the house we had on the farm. It was a little cabin. They could only there was only 16 people can stay there. They only had 16 beds, and we had 47 people went. So we took up 3 weeks. There were 5 weeks of winter harvest. I remember the first week, the Canadians the Howdens got it. The second week, we got it for 3 weeks. And then Kai from Singapore got it for 1 week, and the Texan got it for 1 week. Oh, so there were 6 weeks of winter harvest in Fort Nelson. So that was the first year. And then I still remember we were like bidding. We had to get online and grab it. So, and then 2018 was the year I didn't go, I think, but we had members who went. I think we had about over that, but that was the second year when we had the house. So I think we had about 50 people went the second year. And then 2019 was the first year of Winter Festival. And when we went on Winter Festival, we had about 100 people from Hong Kong went. And 2020 was before COVID hit, right? In March. And the week that we started Winter Festival was the week that we had the global lockdown. And I still flew. I remember our team members were asking me, Joanne, are you going? I said, of course I'm still going, unless there's no flights. So the week I arrived was the week of the lockdown. We're supposed to lock down. And I went early. I went a few days early, and I was sitting there having a meeting with Gary, and corporate was calling him and saying that should we close Winter Festival? And corporate said, well, it's up to you, Corey, you decide. And we were sitting there, we're like, okay, we've got people flying from all over the world. We've got people flying in from the US, from Canada, from Asia, from the Philippines, from Australia. What do we do? And I remember that morning we talked about it, and I said, well, I think what would Gary do? I sit there and I said to Corey, I said, what would Gary do? What would Gary say, right? And that was 2020. So Gary passed away already. And I said, what would Gary do? And both of us agreed that Gary would go, of course, we're going to keep going. What do you mean? Why stop? Right? What was going to stop Gary? Nothing. And was the global pandemic going to stop Gary? No. And it's just the beginning. We had no idea that was going to last for two years. And we had no idea it was going to shut down the world, right? So we continued, we went on, and I said to him, I said, maybe for the people who are already on their way, just let them come, right? For the people who are still at home, they can decide, right? It's their life. If they want to come, they come. If they don't want to come, they don't. And ended up, we had about 50 people instead of the original 300, 400. We had 50 people who went. It was really cozy. We had a great time. And when I went home, in fact, 50 out of 50 people, there were a few who left early because they were worried about the lockdown. And then when we went home, I was the first batch of people who had to quarantine at home. So anyway, that was some story that we can tell our grandchildren. So after having the winter harvest for so many years and having so many different visitors visiting from all over the world, the people in Fort Nelson realized that this is a company of love, and they realized they all of them told me, we love all the Young Living people. Everybody who came to the farm to visit, they're so grateful. And the people who worked at the distillery, in the beginning, it was just a job for them from 2013 in the beginning, and they had a opening, they had a grand opening. There were a few 10, 30 people who attended. They already felt the kindness and the gratitude of the Young Living members. But after 2017 winter harvest, after those 6 weeks, the staff at the distillery told me in person that in the beginning, it was just a job for them. But once they have seen these people from all over the world coming, participating in the harvest, filling the cookers, doing videos, taking videos and sending the word and posting on Facebook and telling them how grateful they are for their job, for what they do for us, to create and to produce these oils for us that are sent to all over the world to save lives, it gave them an extra meaning. It gave them a purpose. It gave them a purpose to their work. And they look forward to every year in March when people from all over the world, and they never imagine, you know, these people, most of these people never left Fort Nelson or that area. Most of them never left that area in Canada. A lot of them have traveled to Calgary. They have direct flights to Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver. And their life it's bounded within that part of Canada. A lot of them have never traveled outside of Canada. And now we've got people from all over the world, from Asia, from Hong Kong, from Taiwan, from China, from the Philippines, from Australia, traveling from Europe, traveling to Fort Nelson and telling them and thanking them how grateful they are for their work. It gives them new meaning to their life, really. And we're so grateful, right? And they told me personally that every year they look forward to March when all these people will come into their little town. And not only do we send love and gratitude to them, we bring businesses, right? We bring businesses to the hotels, we bring businesses to the restaurants, we bring businesses to the health food store, we bring businesses to the supermarkets, right? And we bring businesses to the traveler stand, this little, tiny little souvenir shops. And it's such a great way to pay it forward. And when they did not welcome, because they did not know, because this was what happened. There was an oil price plunge in 2014 because a lot of the oil company had to close down. But instead of gas and oil industry, it was the essential oil company that brought life back to the town. And we're so grateful for the people of Fort Nelson. And let me go back to Black Spruce. That was a little backstory that I felt was important to share about the people of Fort Nelson, how amazing they are, how I love them so much. And so interestingly, let me go back to the Black Spruce trees and let me show you this video. So the Black Spruce tree, as you see, they are very skinny, they're very small. And because they can grow, remember the letter, they can grow in any kind of environment. They can grow in soil, they can grow in box. They're similar to wetland, and these are just roots that are intertwined and weaving together to form the support ground. There's no soil, just roots and water. And Black Spruce can grow on this, and they can grow tall too. And interestingly, these boxes only allow humans and animals to walk through. We cannot drive any cars or any machinery through it because the box, the box can only support lightweight animals, humans, even small machinery. If you drive through it, it goes down and disappears into the water underneath. Okay, I have two videos that this was Corey, and I recorded him talking about it. Interesting.
Oh no, don't
It's
pull
just
me.
a root
I got
system.
thrown the fuel bike right now.
Right? But then if you just take and squeeze that, just so you can.
Wow, hey.
So like, I mean, that's why when you expose any part of it, it's just water. It's literally just water and roots. Like there's no soil.
All right, and when we were walking on it, it's spongy.
So yeah, I mean, I need to be seeing some interactions with the trees, and you can point stuff out, Wes.
So this was the summer. We were there, we were taking videos of the farm. So those are part of our farm. It's amazing. It's beautiful there in the summer too. So to compare, to show you, this was the summer photo that I took. This is the winter photo that I took. I love the place. You can probably see it in my eyes. Every time when I think about Fort Nelson, when I think about the farm there, it brings so much joy to me. And this small tree, let me show you. This is the tiniest tree, and we're harvesting. And I chose the big long tree, and I thought it was going to be easy, but this is actually quite difficult. This is the entrance to our farm, and we were actually, this photo is taken right here. Okay, right here. It's the same place. This is the summer. This was right in the middle of July, I think, early July. This is right before convention, so, and August or July. And let me show you this video. Tree, we were counting how old the tree was. Oh, so I just cut this tree down. The snow is like waist deep. I wasn't really thinking when I was choosing to cut this tree down.
Okay.
And then this one, we're counting.
So Kevin, how do we know how old a tree is?
So after you cut your tree down, you wipe off all the sawdust and wood shavings, and you start at the center and you count the rings. So we start with the center. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27.
We're here, right?
27. We're right at the tip of my finger. So
Oh, this one.
yeah. 27.
So this one.
Right there.
Oh, okay.
27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, and then 40 is this outer ring right here. So that tree is 40 years old.
Wow. So some people would say that it's not nice to be cutting trees that's 40 years old, but I think some people look at it differently. How do we think about it? But because do we replant trees? Do you know?
We reforest, yes. The reason we get rid of the trees that are getting to 40 years old and a little older is so we let in more sunlight to get into the younger trees and allow the younger trees to get more sun and allow them to grow and be healthier and better for
I see. Okay, let's keep going. Thank you.
So that totally makes sense, right? So when we hand harvest here, we hand harvest most of our trees, and Fort Nelson, they do have machinery where it will be on land because Black Spruce also grow on land, and they do have sometimes, but they have a certain period of time they can only harvest because in the winter, because some of the time at night when the snow is too hard, they cannot drive into the farm. So there's a certain, I can't remember exactly, but there's only a short period of time when they can harvest with machines. And that's why I said it's all handmade, you know. What did I want to, and there's like abundance of them. Yeah, it's very interesting. So there's a lot of knowledge to it. So Kevin, his name is Kevin Liberton, and he's actually another Kevin. He works at the farm too, and he's also native from that area. And they feel totally fine with us cutting down the trees because it actually allows the other trees to grow better. And I felt that it was very interesting for such a small tree to be 40 years old. And when we were cutting it down, I remember the first winter harvest when we were there, we had a bunch of people from Hong Kong. We have no idea how to cut trees down. We've never hold a handsaw before. We were all laughing at ourselves. And we were trying to cut the tree down. And it was quite difficult. And you know how after you've nearly cut through the whole thing, and then you can actually bend it and break it? When we did not say give thanks to the tree, it was very difficult to cut down. When we give thanks to the tree before we cut it down, we actually ask everybody to thank the tree before we cut it down. And we tell the tree that we're bringing the oils that you will give us to the different parts of the world so your oils can help these people. It became very easy to cut. And it became very easy when you cut it halfway, you just bend and the tree will break. If we did not give thanks to the tree, we cut it halfway, we try to break it, it's just bendy. And we couldn't break it. It was pretty amazing. I mean, I cannot actually explain to you why. It's obviously there's a difference. And interestingly, we were there the second week, I think we were there the third, I can't remember, but they were doing measure. They were doing they were doing cokes that were only cut by. They were doing coking. They were doing a coke that was only distilled from the trees that were cut by the members. They were doing it so that they can compare and they could see if there's a difference between the distillation and the oil results and the quality. So every week when we were there doing the winter harvest, there was always one cook that was just done by members, okay? And interestingly, when we were there and we were giving thanks to the trees, that cook had the biggest yield and the highest quality of all the previous distillation. And we had a group of Texans who came before us. And Texans, you know, they're good, they're strong people. And the Texans, I think there were more men than women. And when we went there were only 2 men. We were mostly women and little bit like mostly women. There were like 16 of us and there were only 2 men. And most of us women had no idea how to use a saw. Yet the yield from the cook that of the trees that we harvested was more and was better quality. We think it was because we prayed and we thanked the trees. And that's how all this worked, you know? And they were pretty amazed too. The people the staff who were working for us, they're pretty amazed at how much difference it made. And it really gave them even more gratitude towards what they do. And so other photos from the summer. So these is ground soil. So these are the black spruce tree that are grown on soil and on land. And I was there for the summer. This was when I was there. And I actually, this was an outing with some local friends. They brought me to a cabin that they had in the woods. And so beautiful. And these are the resin from the tree. And this is a video. Gloria.
呢個 Black Spruce 樹咧比較大啲嘅，你睇下佢爆咗啦，
And
全部
when the
都係
tree was broken, you can see the
啲
resin
乾咗
coming out of the
呢啲
tree.
透明嘅啦 ，still running。
The white resin, it's very similar to frankincense.
Okay, this is clear。
Mhm.
呢個咧係透明嘅。
Some of them came out clear.
跟住咧，我咧同埋
And I'm here with
say hi。
Gloria.
In Fort Nelson, BC, we're taking Joanne on a tour of the forest, and there's a lovely
You're supposed to hug the
black
trees.
spruce tree.
Yes, I know. I'm gonna hug them. You know, eh? You hug the trees.
Oh,
Yes.
I better hug the tree.
First hug the tree. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, so Gloria and her cousin, they're native there. They're native Aboriginal people. And so they brought me around and they said, you have to hug the trees. And I'm like, oh God, I'm gonna like walk around. Really beautiful, really, really beautiful. And so they said you're gonna get that. So when you go there, you have to hug the trees. So I'm gonna show you another video of the unloading the cooker. So these are monster cookers. We said that we're gonna have oils for the rest of our life. So you can imagine the steam and the smell of the steam, right? You can totally get it. It's amazing. I love it. And you see how the floor is like when you pull out, when you unload the cooker, and the chips fall over the floor, right? Just like in all the other distillation process, Gary required that after every load, when you unload it, it had everything, all the floor needs to be cleaned. The inside needs to be cleaned. The floor needs to be cleaned before you refill the cooker. Okay. And interestingly, Gary has been looking for ways to reuse the chips that have been cooked. And now they have found a way to reuse it. There's actually a there's actually a machine that will use these chips to make little pellets so that they can burn in the heaters. So we're recycling it, we're reusing it. They have a machine that will put these chips that have been cooked and make it into little pellets so that they can use it for as firewood. And when you burn it, it even creates that amazing smell, right? So they never waste anything. Gary is like super strict about environment and protecting the environment, and really, really amazing. And each batch of the oil will go through a GCMS testing machine. And this is one of our lab techs. Oh, I forgot his name. And so they would come out and they would dump it outside, and then they would transport it to the factory, where the factory is also on site, where they make pellets out of them. Let me show you. We call it the oil dance. You can see the little tiny little bubbles rising. These are the little bubbles that have the oil in them. You see the tiny little bubbles, and then the big bubbles. These are the oil that will rise to the top. And it's lovely. I love watching it. And you see this white thing is actually the membrane that wraps the oil in the tree. When you distill it, it actually also comes out the white membrane, the oil membrane. And this actually is a really good natural preservative for skincare. So some of our attendees were aromatherapists that is really focused on doing DIY face skincare. So we took the white membrane, and then they brought it home to use it as preservative. Fascinating, right? And then, so this is Frank. Every single batch of our oils is distilled by Frank. Frank used to work in the oil refinery industry. Before he came, he had shortness of breath and very bad skin. After working here for about 6 months, he realized that his lungs are repaired, his skin is amazingly soft, and his spirits is high. Like he's happy all the time, and his overall health has improved. He's very, very grateful for Young Living, and is very grateful for this job. He loves what he does. He loves us. Every time we go, he spent so much time explaining everything, and every batch of oil is filtered. Can you imagine? Every single batch of Black Spruce oil is filtered by him. Oh my God. And this is filtering. So this is how you filter the oil. Okay, we use organic coffee filters. Gary found out that it's the best way to do it. They've tested several different ways. So this is the cabin, this is the house that they allow us to stay when we are at winter harvests. And this is the photo of the kitchen. We sit around here and we eat. This is the back door of the kitchen. And this side is the east. That side is, no, sorry, this side is west. So you can see the sunset like here. And then this side is east. You can see the sunrise like so in here. And for front door of the house faces the Alaskan Highway and the northern part. So you can actually see the northern lights right outside the door. Pretty crazy, right? And as Marcia said here in the comments, with the year that she went to winter harvest, she couldn't see because it was overcast. It was cloudy all week and she couldn't see the northern lights. So when they built this house, well, when they leased the house, when they rented the house, the staff learned that a lot of the members who came for a week did not have the opportunity to see the northern lights. What they did was they drew the northern lights on the wall. We have one of the staff, he's amazing in his drawings, and he painted the northern lights onto the wall of the meditation room in the house. And then they install lights that look like the ceiling. It's beautiful, right? It's such a beautiful place. It's a beautiful, the people are so beautiful. They have such amazingly beautiful people in that town. And so hopefully that the Winter Festival will come back and then we can attend again. And when we're doing Winter Festival, not only can we participate in the harvests, we can also do the dog sled. This is where Gary got his dog sledding dogs. We can come visit here and we can experience the dog sled We can go to that lake and we can play on snowmobile on the frozen lake, and then we can adopt a tree and donate money to Young Living Foundation. They will send us photos of the trees and post it in the Facebook group every year, and we can watch our tree grow. And and these are champion dog sledding dogs. They love people. They get so excited if they know that they can be running. The reason why they're barking is because they want to be chosen to lead the sled. So that's very, very cute. Other than that, we also always go to the natural Liard River Hot Spring. It's about 3 hours drive through the snow up in the northern parts from the farm. And we always go after lunch, and then we arrive around 5 p.m. and then we go to Sook once, take pictures, and then we stay overnight across in the cabin across the street. There's like a little lodge across the street, and then the next morning we wake up at 5 a.m. We go across the street and we do a walking meditation into the hot spring, and we experience the magic. This photo was taken right before sunrise. This is me. We experience the magical energy of being under the northern lights. And even because we don't see the northern lights, there's still the energy is still there, right? Sometimes when it's overcast and you can't see it, but the energy is behind the clouds. The energy is still there, the vibration is still there. And if you're lucky, you can even catch northern lights when you're soaking in the hot spring. It's the second largest natural hot spring in Canada. It's beautiful there, although very cold. And then they stay overnight, like they stay awake throughout the nights to make sure that we get to see the northern lights. And they bring us out in sleds into the middle of the farm. This photo was taken in the middle of the farm. This is our distillery, and these were the northern lights. I took this photo. This is my photo. And so we were waiting for the northern lights, and it's just so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. And this was the middle of the farm. They would put out like bonfires so that we can wait. And even when there's no northern lights, it's still beautiful, right? No northern lights. This was the northern lights. And we just waited in the cold and we just took photos. And it's such a beautiful experience. We all have to go. Oh, when travel opens, I have to be there again. So I hope this was very helpful for you to understand more about a Northern Lights farm and our Black Spruce oil. I learned it 1 year. In the beginning, when I went there, I didn't take a real photo. I just had my iPhone with me. And then I decided that I couldn't. I just really needed to bring my camera. And I learned how to take photos because there are people who would tell you how to do that. So I'm very proud of these photos. It's just great memory. And I really look forward to going back there. And next week, we're going to talk about rebuilding Nepal. We're going to be talking about how and why Gary decided to rebuild Nepal and what we have done for Nepal. So stay tuned, and I will thank you for tuning in this week. I hope you're going to tell your friends about it. Feel free to watch replay, ask me any questions in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer it. If not, I will find the answer for you. So until next week, I will see you then. Okay, bye. Remember to put Black Spruce on and experience it this week, and then tell me in the comments what you feel. Okay, bye-bye. Love ya.